are so proud to be working with KC3 Consulting. They are supporting this wonderful session for us. And today we're exploring the energy industry and how a lot of us here are either interested in breaking in, transitioning into, or developing the skills that they need to be able to become the next energy industry. So thank you so much again. And we have our wonderful moderator, Daphne Rose Sanchez from KC3, that will be actually leading the conversation and introducing our panelists. So thank you so much and give them a round of applause.
My name is Daphny Rose Sanchez, she, her pronouns. I'm the executive director of a firm called Kinetic Communities Consulting, or KC3 for short. We have a phenomenal panel of people here with you today, and we're going to dive into the clean energy sector, specifically in green energy. So I'm going to pass it over to each one of them so that they can introduce themselves. If you can share your name, your vocation, and actually, like, how did you get into this field? Would be great.
I'm Cristina Garcia, she, her pronouns, and I'm going to be kind of wearing two hats today in my responses. One is my 9 to 5. I work at Con Edison. I manage their residential incentive or rebate programs focused on weatherization and decarbonization. And I've been in this like decarbonization or built environment space now for almost the last decade.
And what's decarbonization?
Yeah, what is
Make sure we're not using.
decarbonization? Great question. So it's the removal from fossil fuels in buildings, and really, given that the largest consumption of fossil fuels is focused around HVAC, so like your heating, your domestic hot water use, it's really focused on that. So I do that in my 9 to 5, and then as is written on the screen, I also in 2017 founded in a nonprofit called Latinxs in Sustainability, which is really aimed to help uh, increase Latinx representation in the sustainability industry, given that we are really underrepresented. And I'm sure we'll get to that later.
Hi,
Oh,
everyone.
sorry, I didn't answer the last question, and so you don't forget either. How did you get into this space? So I think I'll get to this too, especially because we're talking about careers, but I had a really windy path. I did what my immigrant parents told me to do, which was like get the career, get higher education. I got my master's and I could not land a job. And luckily my dad is a waiter who doesn't stop talking about me and my sister. And he just kept, hyping us up to anyone that could, which he tried to do last night. And it ended up being an old boss, which is really funny. But anyway, he did that, over 10 years ago and got me my first internship. So it's like a really beautiful story. Thanks, Dad. But it's not what everyone has access to. And so that's also why I'm a big advocate for like making sure that we're making pathways for people into these careers.
Hi, everyone. My name is Christina Whatley. I'm a partner at BEA Venture Fund. BEA stands for the Black Economic Alliance. I lead the climate vertical there, where we cover really the full spectrum of all things climate tech, energy, transportation, mobility, a lot of different things. I like to say if I can understand it, I can underwrite it. How did I get into this industry? I started my career as an investment banker, very traditional path, focused on sell side mergers and acquisitions. I found that work to be just not aligned from a mission perspective of what I felt like my life's purpose was. And I wanted to move into a segment that felt like I was really making a contribution to the world. Honestly, I didn't even realize that there were avenues for me to remain in finance, but doing work in alternative energy or doing work in climate and sustainability. And so as I started to learn more about those opportunities, like many of you all might be doing today, I found kind of the right path. I spent a number of years at a firm called Generation, which was founded by Al Gore, who you may know. And I then joined Black Economic Alliance last year after about 4 years at Generation in the growth equity vertical there.
And just really quickly for folks, what is a venture capital firm?
A venture capital firm is an organization that makes investments into other companies. So we'll write checks into and take equity positions, equity meaning like we own a piece of that company, and help them grow and scale. Most venture capital firms will have some sort of thesis. Our thesis is that by backing, or at least within my vertical, is that by backing companies that are focused on things that are connected to sustainability, we feel that in communities that we care about, particularly low income or maybe underrepresented communities that lack the traditional resources and access to capital, that can be a economic mobility boon for those communities. Oh, and I'm based in Oakland. Sorry to interrupt. I'm based in Oakland, California.
Hi, everybody. My name's Tucker McDonald. I am the labor consultant for an organization called Climate Power. Um, I'm a labor guy that kind of found his way into the environmental movement. I started my career working for a union that represents the folks that carry the mail, and then spent another 9 years as the political director for the American Federation of Government Employees, which is the largest federal employee union. And really got to know the entire labor movement through that work, and started my own consulting business in 2019, and was the labor consultant for the DNC in the 2020 cycle. And that kind of created this moment where, as we were going into the election, there was a lot of discussion about policies like the Inflation Reduction Act, where the environmental movement and the labor movement had found themselves at this really great, you know, position where they were advocating for a lot of the same policies. And there had been some friction in the past. And so this was this wonderful moment where you saw the labor movement working with the environmental movement to think about the future, think about what type of infrastructure do we really need to make this transition to a renewable energy dependent country. And what comes with that is this wonderful opportunity also to make sure that these jobs are jobs that can support a family, and that these are jobs that are not one off, a project here, a project there, but they are careers. And that's what's so great about a lot of union jobs, is that these are not, jobs that you're going to just do for, 1 or 2 months, or even 1 or 2 years. If you become a registered apprentice in some of these trades, you're going to have an entire career with a pension, with health care, and more importantly, you're going to have the ability to support a family while you're assisting the entire country in transitioning, to this renewable energy infrastructure that we all want and desire. And I am, as you can probably tell, originally from Lubbock, Texas, so I apologize if you can't understand some of the things I say. But lived in DC for about 25 years, and then am now in a little town on the coast of Massachusetts.
Great. Thanks for sharing. So it sounds like we actually have a panel of transitioners, folks that worked in one sector and jumped into the clean energy space. I think it's a really important, since this is a green jobs pavilion and you all are here looking for green jobs. Can you talk to us a little bit about how that transition took place? What were the skill sets that you had that you felt compelled you can that would advocate for yourself, or skill sets that you were missing while you were doing that transition? And we'll jump around. Want to go first?
Sure, I'm happy to go first. Well, I got really lucky. My first job in the what we will all call impact investing space. It was an unsolicited email from a staffer at Bank of America. I was pretty active on LinkedIn and posting think pieces and just talking about the stuff that I wanted to work on and ideas that I had about how finance could be leveraged differently. And someone, I guess, found me miraculously, because this is 2012, long, long time ago, early days of, I guess, yeah, the earliest days of LinkedIn. And yeah, I think I just kind of got lucky, but I had the kind of specific technical expertise to go into that field. I had, studied finance. I was working as an investment banker, and it was a pretty natural pathway. Most people who work in investment banking go into private equity or venture or something around that. So that's it was a really natural path for me. With that said, I think that one of the things that was like a lesson learned was talk to people, take calls with whoever. This was like a random person that messaged me on LinkedIn, and I was like, yeah, okay, I'll have a call. Why not? And so just being open to really anybody who might have an opportunity for you was, I think, a pretty key thing for me. Fast forward many, many years, I ended up going to business school and getting my MBA. And that was a pretty critical piece for me, as well as I thought about trying to ascend into more senior ranks in my field. I think that a lot of that technical training was really important for me in my vein. I don't know that that's the same for everyone, but that was pretty relevant for me.
Elevate something, because I think us as women of color, we like to say we got lucky, but you were putting in the work. You were putting in the work to write those LinkedIn posts, to be very creative and advocating, and so you were putting that work in. that got you that connection. Omar, would love to talk. Please introduce yourself, introduce the work that you're doing, and how you came into the clean energy workforce.
Thank you, thank you. So my name is Omar Duran. I'm CEO, founder of Life 3. I've been working on data and technology for workforce development, specifically in clean energy here in New York City. And recently I've been writing some NYSERDA grants to try to get funding to bring in more data analytics into a lot of the building electrification technologies that are needed here in the city to hit some of our CLCPA goals.
Thanks for sharing. And so going back to the other question, like what was the skill sets that you leveraged to transition into the clean energy sector? And what were the skill sets that you were missing that you worked on in order to make yourself a stronger candidate?
Yeah, coming from a labor background, I've been very much focused on, just seeing job creation for union members. The most important thing a union does is to try to make sure that their members have a job and have a collective bargaining agreement and have a life that, they can sustain their family on. And so there was this moment, as we said, where we were looking towards the future of making this transition away um, to more renewable energy. And so I really had to learn a lot about what was going to be required to actually make that transition. And for instance, based on our demographics, our aging demographics of the skilled trades, we need about 81,000 new electricians every single month over the next 10 years. So you can only imagine like all of the things that we're talking about when we're talking about wind and solar development, when we're talking about AI and data centers and, just really making the grid sustainable so that it can transmit any type of energy that you're, deploying. We have to have those workers on the ground that know how to do this work. And some of you may have never considered thinking about you know going to work for a union in the skilled trades, but I will say it's such a great opportunity because think about having a career where you have no debt for the 5 years that you're learning to become a skilled tradesman or woman. You are getting paid. If you're a licensed electrician, you go through 5 years of training to become a journeyman. And at the end of that process, you have zero debt. You've been working that entire time, and you're basically in a career where you're going to be making close to six figures right from the get go. And it's only going to get probably worse in the sense that the demand is only going to grow, especially as we find ourselves in this AI race where the demand for skilled tradesmen and women um, is going to be everywhere. And so you can live everywhere. You can, you know, go to different parts of the country, work on different projects that really call to you as, a person that really wants to make this transition. And so for me, it was really learning about that journey of what it would mean to be, a worker that is really focused on trying to make sure we have the grid to do what we need to do to help the planet. And so that was a wonderful journey. And at the end of it, I've learned a lot about, this world that, I think we should be doing a much better job of letting young people know that this is such a great career path that would allow you to do a lot of the things that you want to do.
Yeah. So, as I mentioned, I had a hard time getting my foot in the door. So worked in construction from that conversation with my dad with someone having dinner that led to a job in construction, and I worked in construction for a few years. But during that time, I watched An Inconvenient Truth, by Al Gore and other. I was really like convincing myself like this is not what I want to be. I want to be working in sustainability on climate change solutions. I want to apply my engineering degree to that, and I was applying left and right, and people were turning me down. People were like, your background's in construction. No, like we can't, we're not taking a chance on you. And it wasn't until I got finally a few interviews that people were like, oh yeah, project management. Like, you have a lot of project management experience. It's like, yes, I do. I was like, thank you for telling me what I should have been saying this whole time. And they were really helping me like shift this narrative of like, help me. I have no experience, but like take a chance on me too. No, actually, I'm qualified with these skill sets that you need. I'll learn the brand new climate stuff that you guys are talking. I'll learn that lingo on the job, but I have these strong skill sets, customer facing. I talk to pissed off contractors every day. That's got to come in handy somehow. And so I really just started like realizing like the shift in like how I was to present myself at these interviews, and like that I wasn't coming like, empty-handed. I had a lot to offer. And I really value that now in interviews. Like, I don't care about the technical or like the climate stuff you've done. Like, that can add some benefit, but I really care about like the project management, organization, customer facing skills, like things that, and to me, things that like waiters really bring to the table. If you've worked in that kind of service industry, like, you've dealt with people. I want to hear that. And so, as I moved in my career, like, I mentioned that I worked at a restaurant for 7 years. I mentioned all these things that make me, I think, this like really good candidate for a role. And the other thing, kind of to Christina's point, which happened during this, is, eventually I landed two job offers. One was at in the mayor's office of New York, which was like policy people, and then the other one was at an engineering firm. So I was like, perfect, no brainer, the engineering firm. And it was my mentor at the time who was like, I really think you should reconsider. Like, the mayor's office might give you this like eagle eye view of what's happening in New York, et cetera. And I was like, you know what? I don't know what I don't know. I don't have parents at home. My parents have still probably no idea what I do. I think they think I like prevent trees from being cut down. Like, I don't have that resource at home. I have this mentor. I'm going to trust him. And it was the best decision I made because it really like catapulted the rest of my career. So I think just being open to like accepting that you don't know everything, and hear, even coming to things like this and hearing other people's perspectives and journeys, I think is really crucial, and fundamental to like, growth.
My path is a little bit like windwarded. My company is kind of an embodiment of myself. I always knew I wanted to use technology for social good. As I started to learn more about clean energy, I started to really see that there's something for everyone. And through the work that you do, you actually help the communities that have been impacted by a lot of the environmental justice that has happened here, especially in New York City. And so, as I have kind of seen that there's jobs for everyone, even like people that are, re-entering society, learning how to work on HVAC systems, and now with more sophisticated technologies coming into play, with grid modernization and modernizing a lot of the transmission lines to really make use of the renewable energies that we're starting to see come into play. I feel really blessed to be in this space. And so, through my own sort of passions, I've realized that sustainability and the ability to really create technologies that are going to further our environment and help our future society and my kids as my generations grow on is something very powerful, right? It's not just about our environment, but it's also about creating job opportunities so that everyone can kind of grow and make a good living. When I was going to school, I went to school for chemical engineering. There weren't that many jobs in engineering, but a lot of those same skill sets that you learn there are now transferable as we start to think about how we're going to recycle waste, right? How can we make use of our energy and make use of it in an optimal and most efficient way? To me, there's a lot of different areas that non-traditionally can now be reapplied in order to really benefit our society and our overall environment.
That's very real. And I just realized we have so many recovering engineers on this panel. We're like engineering anonymous over here. These points are all very valid. And I think as you're looking for jobs, it's also important to, elevate yourself to create your own pathways, to really think about those transitions and to explore all the opportunities, because the reality is that, the latest job report from the federal level is that there's two people for every one job in the market. And with that, plus the federal government decreasing their interest in climate, the reality is that it can get very challenging to find a job in the market. You add on structural racism, structural injustice, then it becomes almost like a needle in a haystack. So my question to you all is, as people are exploring the clean energy workforce, which the job still exists, we very much have these goals, even if the federal government doesn't give a shit. The state and the city absolutely does. People actually do. People are still dying in their homes. There's extreme heat. There's flooding. There is a extreme need to do decarbonization work, clean heat work, and renewable. So my question to you all is, despite all the odds feeling stacked against someone that's looking for a job, what are the one or two tangible, pragmatic things you want folks to have as they're navigating the clean energy workforce?
Times are different. Like here in the city and places like Massachusetts, there are a lot of opportunities within clean energy. Here at a lot of community colleges now started really advocating for clean energy training. There's been a lot of not just NYSERDA, but now New York Power Authority also offers grant funding, so that community-based organizations and organizations like Life 3 are able to do this good work without putting people into debt. I still carry a college debt, right? I still owe money for my college degree. Not to say that there's anything wrong with going to college, but it's just the fact that now, especially in New York, this is where it's at. Like there's billions of dollars being put into offshore wind, right? And all the work that needs to happen so that we can hit our climate goals, right? If you are here in New York, which we all are right now, there is so much opportunity here. And even in other places, we're seeing that although at the federal level, there are a lot of powers that be that are trying to kind of undo a lot of this work. But even in this same administration, in its first phase, Local Law 97 came to be, right? So it's very much alive, right? We have a lot of intention to bring energy from upstate into our New York City communities here, so that we can make use of renewable energies, right? Making sure that our power grid and our energy storage technologies are up to par, so that we can continue to push the envelope and hit 100% renewable energy. We even see that some of these large companies like Apple and Google, they're part of what's called RE100, which is that they're dedicated to by 2030 that 100% of the energy that they use comes from renewables, right? So with that comes a lot of job opportunities, right? Not only do you need a way to store that energy, you need a way to, the solar panels extracting energy from the sun, storing that energy when that energy is not available, and transmitting it to the cities, right? Because here in the city, these buildings aren't positioned correctly for solar panels, right? We don't have we can't produce hydro energy here, but upstate there is a lot of energy that is kind of being brought into the city, and there's a lot of policies and a lot of money going into this type of work. And with that comes a lot of different contractors, business opportunities, entrepreneurship, as well as job opportunities for people from all walks of life. That's one of the things that I really like about the clean energy space, that there's jobs for everyone, blue collar and white collar, right? Where traditionally there weren't once opportunities, right? So we'll continue to see that same sort of propagation here in the city. So, I don't think, anyone here that decides to stay here, there's also a lot of really high technical grid work that would require remote remote workers to be able to do that type of work. So I don't think there's anything to worry about here in the city. Uh, so I think we should just continue to look for opportunities, especially at the local community-based level. Community-based organizations are always creating opportunities for people to continue to thrive in this space.
Yeah, I really couldn't agree more. And just a kind of an anecdote that I think can illustrate what this path can really be for anybody. I visited an International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, IBEW, local in Philadelphia, and they had a program called Rosie's Girls, which is dedicated at trying to find young women of color to get involved in the trades and to become a licensed electrician. At the same apprenticeship class, there was a gentleman who graduated from Penn State who had a mountain of debt and was in the apprenticeship program because he wanted to pay off his debt. He wanted eventually to have his own construction company. And you really do find in the labor movement in a lot of these places just an extremely diverse group of people that are coming to this job for a number of reasons. And the growth that you are seeing of young workers saying, I want to help, save the planet. One of the best ways to do that is to get into the trades because we have got to have skilled tradesmen and women building the infrastructure to do what we actually need to do. And what's also great about that is with a lot of probably your peers that are facing a rocky road when it comes to the impact of what AI is going to do to their profession or their goals going forward. Well, AI can't build a solar field. They can't build a wind farm or update the grid. Those are all things that have to be done by real people. And those jobs pay very well. And you can even do those jobs for a number of years and then decide to go do something else. Maybe start your own construction company that's really focused on solar and wind development and geothermal, whatever it is. So, what I would say is if you are at all interested in learning about, what that path could look like from the perspective of becoming, a skilled tradesman or woman, I would contact the IBW, the laborers union, the operating engineers. These are the unions that actually do the work of building wind farms, building solar fields, updating the grid. There's other unions that are involved at different levels. Omar referenced, all of the technology around what we're seeing with HVAC systems. The technology is just growing so fast that they need more and more skilled workers that understand these complex technologies that go into a building that are going to be able to really make sure that the carbon footprint is as minimal as possible. So, these are all things that, you can explore in New York City with the trades here. You could go, really anywhere in the country. And I know IBW members that the work that they go do is they take a job and they're gone for 4 months and, you know, they make $150 an hour, work for 4 months, and then they take off for the rest of the year. It may not be all the way climate work that you're going to be doing in some of those situations, but there's so much flexibility that you can find a way to really support yourself, get a lot of the skill set that you're going to need to really make sure that this transition happens in a quick way, and then take it wherever you want to.
So I co-sign everything that's already been said. I think that particularly as you think about where to focus your energy, infrastructure is a great place. I like to think of the picks and shovels mentality of like it's not always like in the context of a gold rush, you don't always have to be the person who finds gold. You could be the person who's selling the picks and the shovels and make a very nice life for yourself. And I think that if you think about it that way, you just expose yourself to so many more opportunities. A couple of examples that I think are relevant as you're searching of like, what can I do now as some things are maybe less attractive because of where the federal government is. The reality is there's a lot of stuff that's just already here. EVs exist. EV infrastructure exists. EV technician roles are great opportunities. There's a company that I'm a little bit biased because I invested in this company. It's called Charger Help. They're based in LA. They service EV charging stations. They also run a program called Smarter Help that trains EV charging station technicians. these are great jobs. You can go become an electrician and get a lot of formal training in that way. Like these are excellent jobs and ways to be in this like energy ecosystem and this renewable ecosystem without necessarily going and getting a PhD in, electrical engineering, which is also a great path if that's what you want to do. I'll also add that, so alongside, say, EVs as an example, look for the stuff that exists because it's going to need to be serviced and maintained. You can be the picks and shovels for all these current industries that are going to persist because it's here already.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. Just a few things that I would add is, and I heard someone say it on the previous panel, your network is your net worth. Networking, it teaches you. Now we all have heard about this training opportunity, right? Like there's such value in exposing yourself so that you can hear about opportunities. And LinkedIn is a great resource. I think using LinkedIn to like somewhat try to stand out is also brilliant and could be pretty low lift and low cost. And that can just help you, stand out from the rest. And the other thing I would say, kind of to Christina's point, I witnessed this as I was working at the mayor's office, was just paying attention to. I'm from New York. I wanted to stay here. What I say to when I meet New Yorkers is, pay attention to like policy that's occurring at the state or city level, right? We're building out policy and roadmaps that are like looking out to 2050. Okay, what careers or jobs are part of that like long-term plan that are going to be around, looking at things like that, I think really also help determine like what feels like it could be maybe consistent or constant in, this larger scheme that feels like it's very volatile. So I think that also helps. And yeah, I think the other thing is, again, like get better at storytelling of like what you bring to the table. I'm really impressed in, when people are looking for jobs, when they demonstrate like grit and like tenacity, like, and that doesn't come from, the school that you graduated from. That comes from like, look at this extra thing I did. Look at this that like look at this cause that I'm passionate about and I found a way to like give back. I think things like that. I'm not saying you have to like get a second job on top of, what you're doing, but like if you can find ways to demonstrate like I I'm capable, I'm passionate, I'm willing to do what it takes. I think that can go a long way during career searches.
Awesome. Well, give a round of applause to the panelists. Thank you all for listening in. And then we'll be here available for any Q&As that you all have. Thanks, everyone.